my dance, make it hurt.
That'd be better if we
That will be better if I unmuted. Welcome everyone to the MVP launch.
Welcome. My name is Leanne Morgan.
I am Gareth Morgan, and you are so welcome to be with us on this launch. You are part of the favoured few that have been invited, and we are going to be spending the next few sessions together, and on Monday nights we're going to be running this. This is the first.
It is indeed, first of many, hopefully.
Absolutely. I think we should maybe call it MVP Mondays. What do you think?
Let's do it. MVP Mondays.
Who needs a little bit of motivation on a Monday?
Definitely.
Everybody needs that.
Definitely. Particularly a Monday evening. I feel Monday evening is sometimes worse than a Monday morning, because like it's the end of the first day of the week and you're like, oh.
That is true.
I need motivation on a Monday evening. So.
Well, anybody else out there need motivating tonight? Well, hopefully by the end of this evening, everybody will be motivated, because we've got some exciting things to talk about.
We have indeed.
And let us know in the chat column. We can see the chat column right in front of us here. And so tonight we've got the chat column through YouTube. But I think next Monday we're going to introduce WhatsApp messaging as well.
That's exciting.
And we're going to build it week after week until we're ready to go even wider. So you can be part of the few that said, you know what, I was there right at the start.
At the humble beginnings.
At the humble beginnings. Well, we are so glad that you are joining with us. And however you heard about it, whether that was through the email list, whether that was because you've been tuning into the Winning Life podcast, which we're enjoying.
We are. Well, me and you enjoying having a chat anyway, aren't we?
I don't think we've talked so much. I mean, we've been married, 22 years?
Well done, nearly 23.
23 years.
And we talk quite a lot.
We do talk quite a lot, but we're talking even more.
Yes, and more kind of intentionally on intentional subjects. So.
Intentional subjects that hopefully are going to help people.
Yes.
And so, we'll talk a little bit more about what's happened today in a moment, and then we're going to start to warm up and get into what MVP is all about. But before we do that, what we thought we'd do is just play the trailer from this morning's episode of The Winning Life, today's episode that was released at 5 o'clock this morning. I know some of you were there waiting at 4:59.
Counting down the seconds until it was released.
I need to hear something else from Gareth and Leanne. And I'm sure that wasn't the case. But anyway, we thought we'd just play you the trailer from episode 13. A bit later on, just to kind of give us a break, we will play the trailer for Wednesdays. You're going to get a sneak preview of Wednesday's podcast trailer. And we're going to be talking this evening not only about what the MVP, get the words out, get my teeth in, what the MVP plan is all about, but we're also going to be taking you through it. Okay, so I know some people have downloaded it. We've put it on our website, winninglife.tv, for free, because we're just being kind and helpful. But it is the kind of thing that to really make use of it, you do need walking through it. Yes. So we want to do that this evening. And the whole purpose of MVP Mondays, which I think we've just named it, is that this is an ongoing process. Yeah. And we all need help to get our plan together and to stick with a plan. I mean, there's one thing getting a plan together.
There's another thing sticking to it.
Definitely. Okay, so we are going to help you. That's what we want to do. We want to get alongside you, help you. Because actually, do you know what? As we help you, we actually help ourselves as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's accountability there.
Definitely.
Okay, so we'll play you the trailer, okay, from episode 13 of The Winning Life. Leanne, where can people find the podcast?
You can go onto the Winning Life TV YouTube app. If you go to the YouTube app, you'll be able to find us there. Equally, whether you listen to podcasts on Spotify or on Apple, whichever device you have, you can go on there. Again, just type in the Winning Life TV and you will find all 13 episodes that you can catch up on. And after Wednesday, it'll be 14.
Okay, so without further ado, here is episode 13 trailer. Enjoy.
And we are here for episode 13. How can I increase my confidence?
Some people almost think it's like a personality type.
Yes.
Confidence it's not a switch, it's a dial.
I remember thinking, this is going really well. It sounds really good. I look so young and cool. This is great. As I was jumping, I fell between the stage blocks, completely off the stage, totally on my bottom, hurt my leg. And I think that is a big thing that drives our confidence, is what do people think?
Our past is either helping us or hindering us when it comes to this whole thing of confidence?
It's more about we throw it away rather than losing it.
Okay, so that is episode 13.
Absolutely. That was a great one for us to record, definitely. Really, really important questions. In fact, all of our podcasts, we like to have questions that are everyday, that are, you know, questions that people might be asking or might not be asking, but kind of provoke a bit of conversation. So, and they're not things that we just pluck out of the air either. They're not questions that we just kind of randomly go, should we ask that question? They're actually all from your book that you've written, The Winning Keys. We kind of make our way through the evaluation section of
And the winning conversation.
And the winning conversation. And we kind of take questions from there that really help us then unpack the everyday questions that people have of how to grow and how to develop as a person. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So make sure that you go and get your podcast, go and sign into winninglife.tv and subscribe on YouTube. That'll be absolutely immense. Okay, cool. Excellent. Well, let's get into this, and we want to make sure we make use of our time together. So the MVP plan, who is it for? And then Leanne, we're going to talk about and unpack why we're doing it, how people can get involved in it, what difference it's going to make to people.
Yeah. Okay.
So essentially, the MVP plan is for aspirational misfits.
Have you ever been called an aspirational misfit?
I'm not sure that I've been called it, but I've definitely probably been viewed as one.
Yes.
Would you?
Very
agree?
true. I think so. Yeah, definitely.
So aspirational, because we're hungry to grow. We want to develop. Again, for us, in terms of our faith, we believe that is, you know, the thing that God has given to us. He's given us potential to work, to put it into practice, to realize it, to act on it, to activate it. Yeah. And so we have that desire. But I think the misfit part comes in when we realize that actually we are unique.
Yes.
And there's one part of uniqueness I think that we like, don't we? We like, in one sense, to be different. But I think there's another part of us that kind of longs to blend in.
I think the whole of society celebrates different. You know, everybody wants to be different, but in reality, everybody just wants to be the same as everybody else. So when you do stick out or you do feel a misfit, you need to know where you fit, where you belong in all of that.
And we wanted to create an environment where aspirational misfits can talk, can plan, can realize that actually we need you to work on that difference.
Yeah.
MVPs hide sameness. They don't hide difference. Okay, now I will talk and we will talk about two types of people, okay? Because we love to contrast. Yeah. So even in the Winning Life podcast, we contrast, and in the book, as Leanne's mentioned, in the Winning Keys, Winning Conversation, we look at the different mindsets that we have, the champion mindset, the competitor mindset, the complacent mindset, and the consume mindset. And what we're looking for are the distinctions, the things that separate those levels. Because if you want to be a champion, then you really want to know what a competitor does and thinks, because you want to try and work on going the next step. Yeah. You don't want to settle for complacency, that's for certain. Yeah. And so we talk about the opposite of an MVP, which is an NPC. Can you remember what NPC is?
Non-playing character.
Very good.
See, that was a good test there. I had to think quickly if I got that right.
Can you remember the film that we watched where the NPC kind of was really part of the theme and the plot of the story? Can you remember?
I can remember the film. I cannot remember. Ryan Reynolds.
Yes, very good.
I knew it was him.
Can anybody help Leanne? I know the answer, but in the chat column, anybody remember what film? So Ryan Reynolds, he plays an NPC. What is the name of the film?
I only watched
Do you remember the
it.
character's name in the film? So he had a certain colour shirt.
It was the blue shirt guy. I
Very
remember
good,
that. That's
very
what he
good.
was called because he was an NPC. He didn't even have a name. He was just known as blue shirt guy because he wore a blue shirt. In fact, I watched this film over Christmas time just a couple of months ago. So I should be able to remember. And the actress in it, Jodie Comer, I think her name is. I really like her. So I should really remember.
Very good. I think there's somebody. Michael.
Hang on a minute. It's just coming to me now without looking at the comments.
Without looking at the comments.
Free guy.
Free guy. Very good. Very good. It was a battle there in the chat column. Free guy. Absolutely. So Free Guy, the whole purpose of the film is that Ryan Reynolds, who plays Blue Shirt Guy, is an NPC. In other words, he's a non-playing character, which is somebody who can't affect the game. They're part of the background. They're there in one sense to make up the numbers.
Yeah.
And so in the film, it starts out with Ryan Reynolds, Blue Shirt Guy, essentially following the same pattern every single day.
Yeah.
He gets up, he draws the blinds the same way, he gets dressed up in his blue shirt, he goes down the stairs to the coffee shop, orders a cappuccino.
Same coffee.
Same coffee.
Yeah.
Do you remember what else he does in the cafe? Oh, no. She says hello to the same
The same people. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's
And
the
he
same
walks
things
out
happening,
into the
isn't
bank.
it?
And what happens at the bank?
There's a robbery.
There's a robbery. Anyway, we won't spoil the film.
No, I feel like we're just explaining. Gareth is, if you know Gareth, he's great at spoiling films for you.
Sorry.
He will tell you how great a film is, will tell you the ending, and you're like, okay, I don't need to see it now. It's your exuberance, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And giving detail. But yeah, so essentially he follows the same pattern and he recognizes, he becomes aware of the pattern. And again, that's the starting point for us. You know, if we want to become an MVP, which of course we know stands for what?
Most valuable player
Very
or
good.
person.
Yeah,
or
most valuable player or person, yeah. And so if we want to become that most valuable player, if we want to become the person who brings our highest and best contribution to society, who makes that impact, then ultimately we've got to work out what are the patterns that have currently got us locked in. Okay, because those patterns are preventing you affecting the game. An NPC doesn't affect the game. You can't do anything other than the pattern that you're locked in. And in Romans 12, the Apostle Paul talks about this. He talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world. Okay, so there is a pattern that we need to break out of, and the pattern is not out there, it's in here.
Absolutely.
And so the whole idea here is that we want to understand, what does an NPC think like? What does an NPC do? And how do we become aware of those patterns, break those patterns? Because ultimately those patterns are preventing you affecting the game, affecting you making a difference, affecting you delivering that unique potential and difference that you carry inside of you. And so the whole idea here of the MVP and NPC, which is language that we'll keep using, is to help us distinguish between the two. Because it's only when we become aware of those patterns that we can break those patterns. Okay, so that's the whole idea. But, you know, one of the things, Leanne, that I really wanted to do with the MVP plan is to put high intentionality into this. So that's why on the screen and on the document that you downloaded, you'll see 90 days to breakthrough. Now, this is something that we've run in our teams that we lead at Everyday Champions. And over the past year, we've run 90-day cycles. So we will have a plan for 90 days, and and we'll go through that plan shortly. And the whole idea is it focuses us on setting 3 clear goals. And what happens all the time is the goals start to reveal gaps. They reveal gaps in 3 key areas, which we'll talk about shortly. And here's the thing. NPCs don't like looking at gaps. Now, we've all got an NPC in us, haven't we?
Yeah, that's something that is human nature. That's the whole point, is that we have to put to death the NPC, the human nature, because we will always be kind of inclined to go back to that NPC behavior of just blending in, just doing what you've always done. Don't push yourself. Don't recognize your potential. All of those things. That's human nature, is just to slink back.
Absolutely. And also, we don't like looking at gaps. I don't like, that's one thing. This is God's humor, that he would get me involved in writing the books that I've written, doing the broadcast that we're now doing, which is getting people to go in search of those gaps.
Yeah.
See, I don't like the gaps because of how it makes me feel. If I find a gap, for me, it becomes a mirror that makes me feel like I'm worth less.
Yeah.
But the truth is, unless I go and find those gaps, I can't start to deal with the patterns that are producing those gaps, and I can't break out of a cycle, and therefore I can't affect the game.
Yeah.
So a champion has to break that, and I've got to be honest with you, it's still a constant struggle, which is why I think I have to keep doing things like this. So even if nobody was listening tonight right now, even if it was just me and you right now, I need to go at this with an intensity because I have to go after those gaps. So, that's why we kind of bring the MVP and the MPC in that kind of differentiation. Okay.
Yeah. And I think the kind of evaluation that we do, and we talked about this recently on a podcast, that evaluation is painful because nobody really wants to reveal where we're going wrong or what went wrong or what we could do better. Everyone likes to just move on to the next thing. But actually, it's really key for us. If we're going to plan, you almost have to look a bit further back before you look forward to see, where we've gone wrong, or, learning lessons from ourselves before we can take ourselves forward. So evaluation is absolutely key, even if we don't enjoy it. So maybe we should look at a couple of questions for I can see there's a couple of people who've already asked, like, what does MVP stand for, which we said was most valuable player. But you might be saying, well, who are the kind of MVPs that we can look at and go, actually, they're the kind of people that I want to model or want to look at as examples? Because I don't know about you, but I like looking at examples in people to go, that's what I want to be, or that's how I want to act, or that's how I want to achieve something. We all feel inspired by other people. We can all come up with, figures, people that we might know personally or that we've watched from a distance and go, you look up to them because you aspire to be like them. Now, we are individuals, but I think sometimes it's important to recognise who are MVPs and to help us kind of picture that in our minds.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, again, like you, I like to see stories, and because in stories there are patterns. So one of the brilliant things about the Bible is that it is full of ordinary, everyday people who go on to do extraordinary exploits. So that's why I love the Bible so much, because it's brutally honest in revealing ordinary people, their gaps, but then the role that God plays in kind of revealing those gaps, but not revealing them to make people feel worse, but actually revealing them to discover their true identity and their true capability through him. So the story that I go to for the MVP, MPC kind of journey is Gideon. And Gideon's found in the Old Testament in Judges chapter 6, Judges chapter 7, and kind of the chapters around that. But don't worry, I'm not going to be reading out the full story to you, but I'm afraid I will spoil the story if you don't know the story. So the whole idea of Gideon is in chapter 6, I believe it is, he is found in the story in a wine press, threshing wheat, which is not where you thresh wheat in a wine press, but he was essentially hiding. He was hiding from an enemy called the Midianites. This army essentially was a bit like the Man City of the day, who, just world beaters, people just didn't beat them. Although maybe that's not a great example right now. But Gideon was part of Israel, and essentially Israel at the time were a bit like Dorking of the National League. So, sorry, any Dorking fans that might be listening.
You've just lost a whole load of listeners.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know how many Dorking fans there are. But essentially, again, there are so many levels between those two levels of Premier League and National League. And essentially, that's like the Midianites and the Israelites. And so the Midianites were oppressive. They were dominating the Israelites. Gideon was fearful. Gideon saw himself as the least in his family. he was always comparing himself to his family, his brothers, his sisters, or whoever he had in his family. He compared his family to his clan. Every family was in a clan, in other words, like a community, and he saw his family as the least in that community. And then essentially he saw his clan as the least in the whole of Manasseh. So that's the story. Here is a guy with low self-esteem, low self-worth, hiding from the opposition, hiding from the enemy. This would be the last guy that you would approach to deal with this challenge called the Midianites. But of course, as is typical form in the Bible, that's exactly who gets called upon. So Gideon's in the wine press, and he's in a place of self-preservation, which is what drives an NPC. Okay, I break NPC down as, I know we've said non-playing character, but I've kind of give it some different meanings. So an NPC is needs-led. Yeah. In other words, they're focused on what their need is, their emotional need, their physical needs. That's the priority to them. They are people driven. In other words, it's all about what people think. It's how people perceive them. And so again, they're people possessed. And then C, they are consequence focused. In other words, they're reticent to step out. They're reluctant to risk, because what if? Yeah. So the focus is on the consequence. If I know the consequence, then I'll step out. But of course, who knows the consequence, unless it's a dead cert. So of course you don't progress. So that was Gideon. That's a classic definition of Gideon, until he has this episode where an angel appears to him and he says, Gideon, you mighty warrior. And you can imagine Gideon kind of turning, thinking, you clearly got the wrong guy here. You're not a great angel. You've turned up at the wrong place, wrong time, wrong address. But essentially, he gets called upon to be the man to go and do something about this enemy. And the angel says, go in the strength that you have, which again is really interesting, because sometimes we think the capability to do the big thing that we want to do with our lives has to come from out there somewhere. But the truth is, with potential, you carry everything in you to deliver the change that you are called upon to make. Yeah, good. Like a seed, you carry everything in you. So this is a typical example of an NPC, but he is given this mission. Okay. Now, again, throughout the story, and I won't unpack the full story right now, but to spoil the story, eventually Gideon goes and produces this incredible outcome of defeating the army, not through normal means of warfare. God gives him a completely different tactic to do it. Yeah. But essentially, he has an army of, I think it's 32,000 men, and God dwindles it down all the way down to 300 men. So he makes the task more difficult. He makes it more of a challenge. In other words, he takes the 32,000. If you do your maths, he filters those men from 32,000 men all the way down to 300, which essentially he cuts it down from 100% to 30%. That's the first 67% leave because they're fearful. Then he's left with the final 33%. The 30% then end up essentially being needs-led. They drink the water like dogs from the river, and that's a sign to Gideon that these guys don't recognize that they're at war, and so he sends them home. He's left with the 3%. The 3% who are not needs-led, they're not people focused, they are guys who recognize that I'm here for a mission. They are mission driven. And through the MVP plan, what we're looking for is to help you become part of the 3%. The 3% who are going to shake off the NPC part of us and get to become the person that can deliver what only the 3% can deliver. And that is ultimately changing society.
I think that's quite helpful to read the story and hear for the story like that, because actually it's encouraging that maybe people who you feel like you're the only one or there isn't many, you know, that kind of understand where you're coming from, that kind of thing. That's because you're part of the 3%. And while everybody, I believe, has the potential to become MVPs.
Yeah, it's fully inclusive.
It's totally, it's not like that's it. There's only a small club. The reality is only 3% will push through. And so hearing that story, I think everyone can identify with, you know, the feeling of Gideon, the character of Gideon, of like, I'm no good. I'm not good enough. My family don't do this. The history of my family is not, you know, isn't successful or whatever. I don't have the status, the money, the resource, whatever. I don't have the brains, the intelligence, whatever you want to kind of put in that blank there. I think everybody has that, those comments and that narrative at some point. You know, it might be, I'm not confident enough. I'm not in the right position, etc. But when you hear that and you realise actually there is something in every person that can become an MVP, all it takes is for that switch to go on, to go, I want it, and to go after it and say, I want to be part of the 3%. I don't want to be like those men that ran away and you know, or left and were kind of pushed to one side. I want to be those who really pushed through.
Absolutely.
And were part of that small group.
And I think, you know, it's important to say, and this is the challenge. This is why for us as Christians, the challenge sometimes is we've promoted humility as thinking less of ourselves. And so to call yourself an MVP as a Christian is like, ooh, who do you think you are?
Yeah, it's like you are being a little bit prideful or boasting or think you're better than everyone else. And actually, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Totally. It was C.S. Lewis who said, humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
that again, there's a distinction there. And so, you know, when we first called the church Everyday Champions, it was like, why do you call a church Everyday Champions?
Again, it's like about that one.
It's like, you know, I guess in these days, everybody would say, why don't you call yourself, you know, everybody is taking part church? I mean, that would be a great name of a church one. Everybody's at least taking part.
Taking part that counts.
Yeah, but the reality is that we need you, the MVP, and the MVP is somebody who is unashamedly wanting more out of life. Like, you need to unashamedly say, I want more out of life. Now, the key question is, what is the more for?
Yeah.
Wanting more is not a problem. Wanting more, you shouldn't feel bad about.
It's why. Yeah.
It's why. That is the key. And again, this is why we're gonna unpack now what I call the 3 tripod legs. Okay, if you think about a tripod, you need all 3 legs for the tripod to be stable. Okay, and so we're going to look at those 3 legs now, because MVP, quite literally, the 3 letters are those 3 legs that will enable you to understand that there's more in you, understand what the more is for, and then how you can actually activate it and realize it to change the game.
Yeah, just going back a little bit, I think, you know, the last kind of 3 years, not just in Britain, but as the whole world that we've been through, a massive change in terms of, you know, obviously COVID-19 brought about a devastating change to society, but then there was something that happened with it that people began to go, there's got to be more to life.
Yeah.
Because the rug was pulled from under our feet in terms of what we would say is our security, you know, and the norm. That all just changed. And so it really began to make people think, both Christians and non-Christians, whether you have faith or not, to say, there's got to be more to life. Is it really just about getting through, surviving, being an NPC? Or really, you know, life is fragile, or, you know, it's made me think I'm bored in my job, or I'm dissatisfied, or I'm unfulfilled, or there is more to be had, or there's more for me, or there's more in me. So I think this whole, the 3 years, that, because it is 3 years coming up.
Yeah,
oh my word.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Oh my word. Yeah, 3 years that since everything changed, that I think people are more likely and more willing than ever to say, my life has to count for something more. And that's where we want to jump on that and go, yes, absolutely. This is where we want to help you. This is where we feel passionate to raise up an army of maybe 3%, but an army of MVPs.
Well, 3% of 7 billion is still a pretty big army.
And spoiler of the story, they won, even with 3%.
Yeah, and again, we'll break this down now, but the reason sometimes you have to go to the 3%, the size-wise, is because you're forced to do things differently.
Yeah.
If Gideon would have had more than 300 men, he would have used conventional warfare to win the battle. But ultimately, if you read the story, he doesn't win it through conventional warfare. He uses a tactic where they are around the kind of circumference of the valley where the Midianites were, and in the middle of the night, essentially, they lit these torches, they blew these trumpets, they created a sound around them which startled the Midianites, and essentially the Midianites ended up killing themselves. And so they didn't even have to
do anything.
To kill anybody or to shed blood. It was literally the most unconventional maneuver. So again, I want to encourage you right now, if you're feeling like you don't have the resource, you don't have the right circumstances to bring about the difference or change that you want to make, and we could spend hours on this subject personally for us, but for me this has been our journey. Like, we have been taken through these kind of literally this filtering process of almost being reduced, but with the absolute fundamental conviction that it's to get us to find the unconventional maneuver that's going to produce a different outcome. And I've got to be honest with you, tonight and the MVP plan is all part of that unconventional maneuver. Okay, so again, let's unpack this.
Yeah, so after speaking about that, the question is kind of then why would we become an MVP? Why would we want to engage in this plan and, get into grips with our aspirational selves?
Yep.
Why would we want to do that?
So MVPs are mission-led. Okay, so if an NPC is needs-led, an MVP is mission-led. So the way that Gideon's belief about his purpose in life from just simply self-preservation to now affecting the story was changed was he was given a mission. It's only when we adopt a mission that we have a demand on us to change things in our lives. And so he was given a picture of a different future. And so getting a mission is about understanding, okay, what is it that I don't want in my life? And we'll talk about the MVP journey in the next few weeks. We're going to talk about a course that is going to come out where you, and I believe some of you that are on the very first of these broadcasts, you will be the guide. You'll go through it first, but then you will be the guide that will help others go through this whole process. And in a bit, we'll just show you the outline of it. Okay, but the first stage is dissatisfaction. The problem is we don't want to change anything in our lives until we've become so dissatisfied with the status quo that we're willing to say enough is enough, something's got to change. We have to actually cultivate dissatisfaction.
It's a healthy dissatisfaction. So I think if this dissatisfaction leads to a healthy outcome, that's good. If everyone's just going to sit there and feel dissatisfied and moan, then that's an NPC behaviour. The whole point of the dissatisfaction is it becomes fuel for the future. And I think everybody can identify with that dissatisfaction to a point. I think everyone has felt dissatisfied with a result in whatever area of life. That could be all the way through from your relationships to your career, work, a project that you're on, or whatever that might be, a level of dissatisfaction. But it's what you do with it after that. And like you said, to cultivate that, actually it's a good place to be if you're going to use it in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely, which is why it is step one. You can't stay there, but any moment, and again, the whole journey is that we're going to show you, and I allude to this in my book, The Winning Motivation, that there are 7 different emotions that we all feel as human beings, but because we often perceive them all as negative and not productive, we don't know how to use them. Yeah. But actually they are, the negative emotions are positive prompts to discern the future that we're carrying and what we can do to release it.
Yes.
Okay. And so the dissatisfaction is with a change in the world that we want to make. Okay. So it is about, again, what is the more for? It's about producing change. And Gideon wanted to produce change for his family, his clan, and the whole of his people. And so he had a shift in him, and it was because he got a mission. So through the MVP plan, through the journey, we are going to help you get clarity on what your mission is. Now, you may be on this broadcast, you may be listening back. We're going to put this out on the High Performance Disciple podcast so people can listen to it back. So, you know, we're aware that people are not all watching or listening to this live. But what we're going to do is we're going to help you, even if you do know what your mission is, to turn up the dial on that. Because usually people get stuck and can't break out of existing patterns. In other words, maybe you've plateaued in your business, you've plateaued in your relationships, you've plateaued spiritually, you know, whatever the kind of ceiling that you've hit is, you may have a mission, but that mission now needs to be dialed up. In other words, there needs to be a greater level of dissatisfaction with the status quo that is going to generate a clarity that says, you know what, that is going to give me the motivation to push through. So M stands for mission led.
Also, just to add to that, you know, if you feel that you don't know what your mission is, that's a great place to start, because everybody does have a mission and does have something. It's about discovering it. And that's the great thing about the MVP plan, is it helps you really narrow in your focus to look at who you are as a person, what you enjoy, you know, the clues of your past, all those kinds of things, what motivates you, what you're passionate about. It helps you focus to go, oh, actually, I do know what my mission is. It was there all along. I just didn't realize. And also, you know, to give the kind of the confidence that you need to push through with that and realize that you can achieve those things. But if you feel like you haven't got a mission, you have, and this definitely, and I've been there. You know, Gareth will testify to that. There's been lots of times, even, you know, in late 30s, early 40s, which I am now, mid 40s, but kind of saying, oh, what is it? You know, for me, it was natural coming to the end of being a mum with the kids, and they're all grown up now, and you kind of go, well, what is it? I thought it was this, but actually it's not. And looking, actually the clues were there all along. So just to encourage you that if you feel like, well, I haven't got anything, you have. You
100%.
You know, it's just about narrowing that focus into and being really intentional in finding out what that's about. So how do I become, if I was to say, Gareth, tell me, how do I become an MVP? I do not want to be part of the NPC club. I want to be part of the 3% club, and I want to be an MVP. How do I do that? How do I go about that?
Okay, so as well as working on the mission, okay, what is it that I want to change and why? The second thing, again, go to the story of Gideon, is Gideon heard the mission. Okay, you're going to take on this opposition, but he heard the words, "You are a mighty warrior." Now, this was a different narrative and story that Gideon had to adopt, because Gideon's narrative and story was, I am nothing. I'm nothing in my family. My family is nothing in my clan, and my clan is nothing in the whole of Manasseh. Now, that's a pretty losing story. It's a negative story. It's an NPC story. He had to hear the words, "You are a mighty warrior," or let me use the words in our kind of context now, "You are an MVP."
Yeah.
And there's one thing hearing it, but there's another thing accepting it. Again, in the Bible, in the parable of the sower, talks about it's the seed. I think it's Mark's gospel that talks about the seed that you accept, or the seed that you persevere with. So there's one thing hearing it, but there's another thing adopting it, accepting it. And so we've got to allow that to change our story. And that's not an overnight thing. So V stands for values driven. So mission led, values driven. So again, if you go to the comparison of the NPC, P stands for people driven. So Gideon was people driven. my people are nothing. Therefore, how I'm perceived drives how I see myself. That needed to shift, and he had to understand the value, the intrinsic value of how he was created and how he was wired, and he had to accept that. Just hearing it that day was not going to make any difference.
Yeah.
Lots of people have heard words that are empowering and even kind of supernatural words and divine words, but even a divine word that isn't accepted won't make a difference to the person. You have to accept it. And so values driven, that's the way that I become an MVP. The mission is like the seed, the values is like the soil. And so I need to create an environment that helps me to keep that soil clear of anything that is going to, how can I put it, dilute the story, lower the expectation. And of course, when those 7 negative emotions, and the 7 negative emotions we'll look at after this short break in a moment, but those 7 negative emotions are the things that if we don't correctly interpret them, they will dilute us from being a values-driven person to becoming a people-driven person, okay? Because emotions are very real experiences, but they are poor explanations.
And I think we covered a little bit about this in the episode that went out today, episode 13, about how can I increase confidence.
Increase confidence, yeah.
And actually, we talked about how very often people experience a lack of confidence because it's based on what people think about them, or they think people think about them. Our lack of confidence will drop when we think people have a certain opinion or, comment about us. And so then our confidence drops and we go, I'm not going to do that thing. I'm not going to put myself out there again. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to try again, because if I fail, what will people think? And essentially that's what Gideon was like. His confidence was based in, it was at the mercy of people's opinions, of which actually might not have even been there. We don't know that. It was just in his head. It might have been true, but
the majority of things that we speculate in our brains are not true.
It's true.
Even what we think people are thinking and saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm guilty of that.
We all are.
We all are, I think. But I'm so guilty of that, and I have to pull myself up on that. So instead of being driven, allow my confidence to be taken away. But as we talked about today, confidence isn't lost. We actually give it away. We actually throw that away ourselves. So rather than throwing our confidence away based on what we think people are thinking about us, which is ridiculous when we actually think about that, we drive it from inside who we are, our beliefs, our values, and allow that to push us
100%.
forward. Okay, so we've covered that. What do I do next to become an MVP? So that's somebody saying, okay, that's great. I understand now why, and I understand how that happens. What have I got to do next?
Okay, so again, let's go back to the story, and then let's look at the P. So if we've got mission-led, values-driven, remember 3 legs of a tripod. So there's one thing having a clear mission. There's another thing accepting your value in who you are, okay, and being values driven. And this is, and I'm going to guess that there's a number of people that are listening to this that you're not kind of at zero on those 2 points, okay. The fact that you've even tuned in suggests that you've probably got some idea of a mission, at least an aspiration. You've got a clear sense of personal value. Again, otherwise you wouldn't invest in yourself the time that you are. But the part that the majority of people fall down on is the P, okay? And the P stands for priority focused. Priority focused. So if an MPC, the C is consequence focused. In other words, I'll only step out when I know what the outcome is going to be, or I'm assured of the outcome. In other words, they're focused on results. The MVP is focused on process. Yeah. They're focused on clarifying what is the priority, what's the one thing that I need to be focused on. And that, of course, is where the plan comes in. The plan keeps us to the priority, okay? It keeps us focused on the process. That's what will help us, even when our emotions are all over the place. We need to say, I'm going to relegate my emotion to the process, to the priority that I need to stay fixed on. So Gideon, interestingly enough, he accepted the word that was given to him. He understood the mission. The next thing that he did was he then, we know from the story, he put that to a test. He put out a fleece. Again, I won't go into the full story, but there's a couple of things that take place before we get to the actual story of the army and the filtering of the army down to the 300 or 3%. And but he goes through a process of understanding that the plan is how I work on clarifying the mission and testing the values.
Yes.
Because this whole process is about who I'm becoming. It's about, okay, there's a future that I can see with me in it, but right now I can see myself in it, but not in my current version of myself. There needs to be a shedding of some more layers of the NPC for me to be compatible with the future that's trying to emerge. And so the way we do that is by embracing the process. It's the process that is refining our character. It's making us compatible with the future. And so Gideon went on this process, and again, he had plenty of time to pull out. He had plenty of time. If he was just focused on the results, then, when God gave him the instructions that ultimately took him from 32,000 to 10,000, that's a poor result.
Yeah.
A consequence-focused person would have done what?
Oh, I'd have given up before he got to 3%.
Blamed God. Why would you give me that instruction that would lead to that outcome? Have you got it in for me? And now, how many of us have said things like that? Like, I did what was right, but what was right got me into more trouble, or led to a result that was less than favorable. But a priority-focused person, whilst they're aware of the facts of circumstances, they keep to the plan. They keep to the priority. And so that is the third leg of the tripod. We need the demand of the mission. We need the process of becoming who we really are, our identity, the values, and aligning ourselves to that. And then we need the plan. And the plan, and this is why we've led with the plan in terms of talking about the MVP plan, because the plan, in all honesty, is the third leg that is often missing. You need all three. They are, you can have somebody who has a great plan, and they believe that they're valuable, but they don't have a clear mission.
Yeah.
Now, again, that's not a pretty exciting plan.
No.
It's not really going to benefit. It's not going to make great shifts or great changes. And again, you can have a great plan, and you can have a really compelling mission. But if you have a poor concept of yourself, again, you're not going to stick to the plan. So all three are absolutely linked. And so that is what the MVP plan stands for.
Brilliant. And that priority focus, really, when you have a plan, it helps you stick to your priorities. I think we'd all agree we have different priorities, really important things, but sometimes we need to sift through what's urgent and what's important. And what's urgent isn't always important, but we tend to put it first because it's urgent, and actually we need to put important first.
100%.
So I'm guilty of that. I do what I need to do to get it done, because then when all those little bits are done, I can focus. But actually I find then I haven't got time to do the important things. I've just done all the things that have vied for my attention all day or all week or whatever. So actually having a plan really does help us keep priority focus, because we look and we go back and we go, nope, this is not on my steps. This is not what I need to do. And we've been really disciplined. And that's helpful for a person like myself that likes to faff around with all the things that need doing so I can focus. But actually, no, you just need... I am a faffer. But actually, no, it's really important to just go straight to the heart and go, no, I'm going to focus on that, and everything else will follow. It makes sense, but as an NPC, it doesn't make sense.
And again, over these coming weeks, we're going to explain how this is going to outwork. We're not just delivering a whole lot of information and leaving you with it. Now, that may benefit you. That may help you. Even what you've heard already may have kind of been an unlocking of something, which is great. But there are going to be a few different ways in which we're going to help you, because the level that you immerse yourself in this process will determine the results that you'll see.
Yeah.
That's why the breakthrough requires engagement. It requires accountability. Notice the 300 were not alone. There was a group. And again, we feel a sense of calling to call out the 3%. And we're hoping that everyone listening to this right now is part of that 3%. Now, we have to go on that journey to bring that MVP to the surface. But if something in you resonates right now, then I want you to know that today is a red letter day. It is the start of a change of trajectory in your life, because there's a change in you that we need to get out. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but society needs some change. It needs positive impact and influence. We believe there's a lot of darkness there where there needs to be light. There's a lot of emptiness where there needs to be fulfillment. And there's a lot of transformation that needs to happen in the various pathways of our society, in industries, in sectors. But we need the MVPs to rise up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We'll have a little break. We'll just it's a 45-second break, because we'll show you the trailer for episode 14. And then the final part, which I think will probably take us maximum of like 20 minutes, where we'll talk you through the MVP plan, which you would have downloaded already, so that you can start to use it. And again, it's the kind of thing that you'll start to use it, and immediately there'll be things where you think, okay, how do I use this? Or how best can I take this and apply it in this area of my life? And again, that's why this is an ongoing journey. It's not something that you can just, in one sense, just do on your own. We need the help of one another to really bring this to fruition. Okay, so here is episode 14 of The Winning Life. Don't forget, you can go and subscribe to it, and then we will be back shortly.
Well, the question for episode 14 is, how is your relationship going? Because of the subject matter, I feel it could be slightly fiery.
Love is in the air.
Oh, please stop singing that song.
And the height of the commitment reveals the depth of the challenge. As an individual, but also as a couple, you need an ultimate that is driving the immediate. You need a shared vision. We've had lots of arguments. We've had lots of debates. We've had lots of disagreements.
I like to call them discussions. You know, children, they are not the glue to the marriage. They cannot be the thing that keeps you together or fixes it.
Okay, well, we're back, and you'll see us in a little box in the corner. And I'm going to attempt to make this work. I really hope that I've programmed it correctly. But here you've got on your screen, bar the part that we're covering, the MVP plan document. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the plan, because in one sense, the three legs of the tripod really kind of rely upon the plan to highlight those gaps in the mission. Because when a plan isn't working, or we haven't got enough detail for the plan, it's because, we need to clarify that mission.
Yeah.
Or maybe we look at the things that we've got to do and we're thinking, oh my word, I haven't got time for this.
Yeah.
Or there's too much going on in my life right now. So again, that's when it comes back to values. Okay, why is there busyness? Am I becoming the kind of person who is just busy because I'm addicted to feeling needed by people? So again, can you see how the plan is going to produce gaps? And like we said at the start, gaps are good.
Yeah.
Okay. Repeat this after me. Gaps are good.
Gaps are good.
Gaps are good. I refer to gaps, GAP. I like, if you haven't realize right now, I like to, is it alliterate or is it, what's the word? Acronyms. That's it. Acronyms. I love acronyms. Okay. I call GAP, I call it growth action plans. When I find a gap, that becomes a focus. That's a growth action plan right there. Let me take that gap and then we work on it, and then let's move to the next level. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. So your plan that you will have. Now, I've started to fill this in with kind of a generic example. And so if you look on the screen, you can see, and for those that are just listening to this, we're on the first page where we look at the future goal. So what we want people to do is to put a date that is kind of far off into the future. Now, this, of course, will be age dependent. So for instance, if I'm 90 years old, I'm not going to necessarily, although I'm not restricting.
Why not?
Well,
somebody
maybe,
might live to 120. You never know.
Yeah, I think
This day and age.
the oldest person in the world, I think, is 141 or something.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
They could have put a lot further on their.
Forgive me for limiting. That was an NPC belief.
That was an
right
NPC
there.
mindset. That was.
Okay, but here I've put a 30-year goal. Okay, so my future goal by the year 2053. Now, the key here is you're not going to have tons of detail because, let's face it, 30 years is a long time. Even 10 years is a long time.
It's hard to be specific. The further away it is, it's harder to be really specific.
It is, and specific in one sense is not the objective. Aspirational is.
Yes.
Again, remember, the mission needs to place a demand on the present.
Yeah.
So if we look at it and we think, oh, well, actually, do you know what? I think I'm on course for that already. Then I would suggest that you are dreaming too small. In fact, I like to say to people, and this, again, I think this challenges probably 99.9% of people because most people don't think like this. Your vision needs to be based around in what way are people 500 years from now going to be thankful that you were alive?
Wow. We thought 30 years was a lot. We've just said 500.
Yeah, I've multiplied that, haven't I? Again,
no, it's good though. It helps you think, actually, my life still could have an impact, centuries after I've been here, not necessarily, remembering my name, but having an impact in the future. It's really, really important. So actually, I think having that thought that people in centuries are going to be impacted by what I do now really does make you wake up and think,
100%. In fact, it's Angus has just messaged in saying the oldest known living person is Maria Brañas of Spain, aged 115 years.
Oh, where'd you get 141 from?
I'm not sure.
I mean,
maybe there is somebody sneakily still living.
I think you were reading
somewhere.
people in the Bible that lived, hundreds of
that
years.
That might be the
old.
case. But almost 116 years and 353
that's still pretty good
days.
going. Almost 116 years.
And then the oldest living man, 113. So the woman wins.
As always.
Of course. And that's a good job because, we need you to outlive us.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of the future goal is to be legacy driven. And again, that's why thinking 500 years from now, because remember, the more isn't just for me. Thinking legacy gets us to think beyond ourselves.
Yeah.
We haven't created an MVP plan for you just to build a better lifestyle. Now, I think when we go after the mission, that we are created for, the potential that we carry, that actually can have and will have a positive effect on our fulfillment, upon our life. It can have a positive effect on bringing increase into our lives. I 100% believe that. I believe, when I look in the Bible, there's a clear kind of effect of when people stuck with the laws and the commands and they followed the big challenge that they were given, the big mission. They were blessed, they were prosperous. So I do believe that there's a byproduct of lifestyle that can be created. But if our mission is lifestyle, then we are living well below our potential.
Yeah.
Okay. So legacy is key. But then, of course, we've got to bring it a little bit closer to where we are today. So here on this example, we've gone 3 years from now, 2026. Now, again, it's still quite difficult to be precise, but the whole idea of this goal is to get us to think about, okay, in the light of the legacy I want to leave, the aspirational goal, be it 10, 20, 30 years into the future, what has to have happened 3 years from now to get me into that trajectory? Yeah. If you think about, and then this is where my scientific knowledge kind of falls short, but when the spaceship enters into orbit, it's very much about getting into a trajectory.
Yes.
You then rely upon almost the forces of the orbiting and the forces of beyond this atmosphere of this planet to kind of get you into a trajectory on course with where you're heading, whether that's Mars or Pluto, not that we've been there yet. But the whole idea is to get into the trajectory. So you're still far from that objective, but you're on the trajectory, okay? And so, somebody who is who wants to, and I'm using this as an example, one day wants to lift the World Cup, okay? That trajectory might be, a 16-year-old might want to have been spotted by a scout. I'm just using that as an example, but you see, okay, like that is going to get him within the trajectory that's going to take him or her to the moon. Yeah. Okay. So again, that's the whole idea. You can't be totally specific, but it's what's the trajectory I need to be on? Then 12 months. Now this is where we can get more specific. It's thinking 12 months from now, and I put here because I often thinking in threes is good. It's enough to kind of get our teeth into, but not creating a whole list of things that becomes unobtainable. What are the 3 objectives in the next 12 months? So on February the 20th, 2024, what do I want to look back upon in terms of the last 12 months and think, do you know what? Yeah, I am so grateful that we achieved these 3 things, okay? And so you can be a bit more specific. I think numbers have to be involved in order to be specific, measurable, okay? Because, again, this is all about creating focus. Is that making sense so far?
Yeah, really good. And I know when I started to do the MVP plan for myself, that was really helpful, to kind of set those kind of distant goals, but then also break that down into what does that look like in the next 12 months.
100%. So again, what we need to realize here is that we need to break the 12-month down into 3-month goals. Okay, that's just on the one. No behind. Sorry, we're just making sure that our equipment here doesn't turn off on an automatic standby. So it's almost like working now to a 3-month year. I've done it, you've done it, where we have set our goals for the year. The problem with that is, I've got a year to complete it. Now, I think it's Parkinson's law, which talks about that we will fill a space or fill amount of time that we give ourselves. So if you give ourselves a year, we'll take those activities that potentially we could do in less than 12 months, but we'll take 12 months to do it.
Yes.
And we've all done it. We've kind of said, I've got a week to do it. And then what happens? We do it on day 6. Yeah. Or midnight of going into day 7. Yeah. And so rather than setting a kind of almost a false deadline, and so the whole idea here is that 3 months is enough to really get some real traction, but it's not too long where we lose momentum. So 90 days is a great period of time. Like I've said, we've done this now. Personally, I've done it longer than a year, but we've done it with others over the past year. And so we wanted to try and test it and to apply it. And then that's why now we want to help more people with this. So the 3 goals, now again, these are just suggestions. It's not a written rule. But we found that creating 3 goals, 2 of which are professional goals and 1 which is personal, is really good. Because the whole idea here is that we want you to flourish in both parts of your life. I think, again, we've seen it within church life, where people have their church life and their work life. In the workplace, people have their personal life and their professional life. And when you live in compartments, you can't truly unlock the potential that you carry. I firmly believe that. Everything in creation is about integration and synergy. So when we compartmentalize our lives, we actually work against that principle, because we go to work on our professional life, and we've all seen, haven't we? And again, let me just say right now, because if there are people that are listening and you're not a Christian, again, this is open to everybody. I say on the High Performance Disciple podcast, the Bible, at the very least, for somebody who doesn't even believe in God, it is a code for success. There are things that people adopt without even realizing it that are in the Bible. It works. But I believe you go to the next level, a whole nother stratosphere, not just the next level, when you realize there's a covenant of significance. Yeah. And that is when, through a relationship with God, actually you unlock the deepest part of you. Okay, so if you truly want to grow, we believe that you've got to go to that supernatural level, not just that natural level.
Yeah.
So again, this is about looking at the professional and the personal, so that we can grow in both those key areas. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of the plan. And here you can see now the next stage to complete, and I'm just going to stick with the professional example on this side. Okay, let me just shift our window to the other side. I should be able to do that right now, I think. In fact, I know I can't, so I'll leave it there for now. I don't want to break it. Okay, I'm doing okay right now, so I'll stick with this. But essentially here, what we need milestones. So if you can see here, we've got milestones on week 4, on week 8, and week 11. Now I've just put the words minimum requirement, because again, what your milestone is will be different for everybody. But the whole idea of a milestone is, in order for me to achieve that goal 1, 2, or 3 of the previous page, I need to have hit these targets by this point. So this is a minimum requirement. Okay, so again, a milestone is a point that you arrive at.
Yeah.
So again, it's about looking at all 3 of those goals, and in this case, this professional goal. Here we are, we've highlighted week 1, and so this is now going to inform the tasks that I need to look at working on in order to hit that minimum requirement. Okay, so if I'm going to hit the minimum requirement, I need to then go to the next. Once I've identified these milestones, I need to then go to the tasks that I need to carry out. So I've just given us some examples here. Tasks to carry out in the next 12 weeks. This is a great opportunity just to do a download, okay? You're not thinking about the order at this point. You're just thinking about what needs to get done, right? So people I need to meet, appointments that are needed to be in the diary. You know, I've put in here LinkedIn updated, and social media page or a website that needs to be updated. A course that I need to attend because I need to learn something new. Social media posts if there's a marketing element to my professional side. Okay, again, in the personal side, one of the things that I've done in the past is working towards a half marathon because I wanted to lower just some of my vital statistics in terms of my blood test. And so the way of doing that was, okay, if I work on these things, then it will affect those results. So I thought, okay, half marathon. I looked at the milestones and what are the things that I need to do. So, for instance, do 5K, then do 10K. I need new trainers, goes on the list of things that I need to do. So again, you can see the whole idea here. These are the tasks that need to be carried out. And then what you do once you've got your list of tasks, this then becomes, you draw from that list and you put it into your weekly action plan. So this is now about bringing real focus. You've got your weekly action plan here. And so, for instance, we've put down, okay, people I need to meet. I need to meet John. Everyone needs to meet John.
Who's John?
John, if we've got a John listening right now, John, you're a very important man. And or Jolene.
Or I was going to say Jane.
Jane.
Where did you get Jolene?
Jolene.
Oh, my days.
I don't know
It's
where
because it's late at night.
I don't know, yeah, that's it, yeah. I don't worry, I've had coffee though, so I'll be up for a while longer. Yeah, and then invite 5 people, for instance. So if I need to kind of have appointments, I need to get those people to book into those appointments, research courses that I'm going to take. Again, I've put here ongoing tasks. Behind the image that you can see, I've put down here, if I need, for instance, to have 8 appointments in my diary every week, because I rely upon appointments to produce business, or I rely upon social media posts in order to communicate a message, which obviously we do that, then that's an ongoing task. It's always going to be on my weekly action plan. So you've got your ongoing tasks. And as you can see here, the beauty and the joy of completing a task. Okay, and the whole idea here is to try and get 3/4 as a bare minimum of my tasks completed. Now, if we get 100%, brilliant. But if you can imagine, if we can get 75% of this done, we create momentum, real momentum. Okay, and obviously, as you can see along the top, we can circle which week we're on. We're on week 1 right now, but we know by week 4 we've got a milestone to hit. Okay, so again, I hope this is making sense. This is a whistle-stop tour for now. We're going to go into more depth, and again, we're going to show you ways in which we can actually help you a bit more directly than just through a live stream in the coming weeks on your MVP plan, should you wish to have that help. Okay. And then now you may think, well, great, brilliant. I can see that's going to be really, really helpful. But this is now when you go to the next level. This is about time blocking. I talk about this in the Winning Conversation, Winning Keys, firewall focus, putting protection around blocks of time where you, again, remember MVP, P stands for?
Priority focus.
Priority focus. Your priority are your time blocks. We don't become people who are to-do list driven. We become priority driven. Because your to-do list, if you follow this plan, your to-dos, your tasks fall under a priority, okay? And time blocking keeps you focused on the things that are going to move the needle in terms of making progress, okay? So as you can see here, we've got 3 different colors representing the 3 different goals. Again, if you go up on the plan, you can see which color represents which goal. And again, time blocking for me, again, you're talking to somebody who's on his school report has his finger in too many pies. Gareth overworks himself, gets too busy. In my NPC self, because that's where my worth is. In my MVP self, it's because I have a mission that I have to deliver on. There are people in my future that are relying upon me delivering this, okay? And again, I never read a book until I was 18. And now I've written 3 books. And again, I don't say that by way of boasting. I say that by way of that happened through firewall focus and having a mission, okay? So as you can see here, you look at your week ahead and think, do you know what? Goal 1 really needs some fuel. So I'm going to give 8 time blocks. And as you can see here, you can put your own times in there. I've put 9 till 11, 11 till 1. You may be a 5 o'clock riser. And, I rise early, but my work starts at 9. But you may want to start earlier or later and go, you're a night owl. You can put your time blocks wherever. But the whole idea here is protecting time to ensure progress. Okay? None of this, I'm just too busy. No, we've got to look at that gap and understand why we're saying that, okay? And so that is the MVP plan, okay? So we'll come back to full picture because we're coming in to land, okay?
Great stuff. And obviously I didn't say anything through the whole of that. This is Gareth that has created that and come up with that. So it was important that he kind of explained it. But I think, for somebody looking at that for the first time, you might be like, what? Where do I start? But actually it's very systematic. And I think that's what helps, knowing that you can work through steps, take your way forward, etc. So yeah, brilliant.
Well, again, I've got to be honest with you. I'm doing this because I need to do this for me to deal with my gaps. So this isn't me saying, I've got this sorted, I've got it nailed. This is about actually me saying, hey, do you want to be part of a community that helps one another? Now, again, I've said to you, we lead a church and discipleship is spiritual development. For anybody listening who isn't a Christian, what is discipleship? I heard Jesus had some disciples. Essentially, it is the mission of the church to go and make disciples. But very often the church hasn't had a system for making disciples. Now, this is something that we are implementing in terms of our spiritual development program. And so, again, every person, whether you're a Christian or not, you need a mission. You need to understand your intrinsic value and you need a plan. Next Monday, we're going to talk a little bit more about how we're going to do this, and we're going to introduce the course, because this is a journey and you can start using the plan straight away. Okay. You can listen back to something that we've talked about in this session this evening, and you can kind of get some clarity on that, but there's more. And so we hope that this has been helpful. We hope that this has gone some way to explaining what on earth this MVP plan is all about. We want you to go and invite other people.
Yeah.
Again, we've not pushed it. I'll be honest with you. We haven't gone to our church and said, hey guys, you need to be on this. Now there will be some people listening that are in our church, but that's because they'll be on our mailing list. Okay. So we've kind of purposely been very restrictive to kind of get started. Because again, there's part of me that just wants to go there. But this is a seed, and this seed is going to grow, and an acorn becomes eventually an oak tree. And I want to see the oak tree be that 3% who are going to shift things in society, who are going to truly make a lasting impact and deliver on their legacy. And so we're going to talk more next week, aren't we, Leanne?
Yeah, so how do we get involved next week?
So next week, well, following this, you will be sent an email with the details and the link for next week. So if you are already kind of in the ecosystem of the mailing list, you can just wait for your link to come through. Once you've got it through, why don't you send it to somebody? If you are watching this on YouTube, then subscribe to the channel you're watching it on, which is Gareth Morgan TV. Okay, and so again, when this goes up ready, you'll be notified of the session coming up. And yeah, if you've listened to this and you've not downloaded the MVP plan, go to thewinninglife.tv and you can follow the links there and you can download your MVP plan. That gets you into the ecosystem of the emails, so you'll be kept right up to date. But Leanne, it's been enjoyable.
It's been brilliant. Thank you to everybody that's joined in this evening. And we know there was a whole lot of information there, but, you know, we want to kind of continue this conversation. And don't forget to kind of join in with the broadcast, with the podcast again on Wednesday. Stay up to date with the discussions we're having. And we look forward to having a conversation. Like we keep saying, we don't want to just talk at you. We don't want just to sit here and spout information. We want to have a conversation with you. We want to create a community. We're about people. So it's been great. And thank you so much for staying with us to the very end. And we will see you next week.
See you next week, everyone. Bye-bye.